Atheist Nomads, episode 344. The Atheist Community of Lubbock with Tracey Benefield.
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to another episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin, and in a bit later, I'll be joined by Tracey Benefield and Lauren, so look forward to the interview. But before that, I got some announcements and then this week's rant. So, on Saturday, this coming Saturday, so February 29 at 8:30 p.m., so after we get Kylie to bed, we'll be doing a live stream for patrons for episode 345. The regular episode will be out at the normal time. So if you're a patron, join us for that. Send us any questions you have. Even if you're not a patron, send us questions. Stuff that you think we should talk about for that episode. It's going to be more free form and probably catching up on some of the news that we have wonderfully and blissfully ignored. But yeah, it's going to be fun. So check that out. If you aren't a patron, you can always find out how at atheistnomads.com/donate. And you can get in on that. The fourth episode of Schisms did drop this week. That was late, but it is out, and it's on the Jewish diaspora. And then the next episode will be the Roman-Jewish Wars, and then we'll actually start getting into early Christianity. So you can check that out at schismpod.com or the easier to spell for most people domain religiondivided.com. And now I guess it's time for the rant. So we've all seen the coronavirus in the news. Particularly, this is the novel coronavirus 2019, or more commonly known as the Wuhan coronavirus. This is not to be confused with all of the other coronaviruses that are out there. There are at least dozens, if not hundreds, that infect humans. Most of them we lump in with the common cold. Yeah, there are respiratory panels done in medical laboratories that test for coronavirus. It's not this one. This one, I believe the only lab in the U.S. doing it is the CDC. So any specimens that need to be tested get sent off there. And there are people getting tested. There was one in Idaho not too long ago that did get tested for it. And yeah, that test isn't being done locally. That's going off to the state and then off to the CDC. So it's scary. The CDC is warning that this will be hitting the U.S. harder soon. As much as efforts are being taken to avoid that, you can't stop it. And one of the more concerning things I've seen with it is just the fact that in a otherwise healthy adult, it's probably going to present like a cold. It's people who are immune compromised. It's people who are elderly and infants and young children who don't have the immune systems to be able to fight that off, that it then goes from being an upper respiratory infection to a lower respiratory infection where it becomes fatal. So it's a lot worse than the numbers suggest. You're only getting tested if it's bad enough that you're going to the hospital to get checked for it or happen to get caught at a border crossing. There's a lot more there than the numbers suggest. And that's kind of terrifying. There's a decent chance that this one will end up just becoming eventually just another strain of the common cold, just be one that happens to kill people. We can all hope that doesn't happen, but there's a pretty substantial chance that it could. And now for the rant with it. We're going to start off in Ghana, where the founder and leader of International God's Way Ministries, I would presume he started off with the title of pastor, but his name is Daniel Obanim. He upgraded his title at some point to bishop, and now he has upgraded his title to angel. Yes, this guy believes that he is God's right-hand angel. But not only that, but he has something that Jesus Christ told him could save the world from coronavirus. What is it? It's an anointing oil. Probably olive oil that he has blessed. He claims that it is was vetted and approved by the FDA. Not the U.S. FDA, but Heaven's Division of Food and Drugs Authority. Yeah, let that sink in for a moment. This is obviously not going to help. he's charging people for this anointing oil 200 Ghanan cedi, which equates to about $37. That's not a lot of money. I'm actually surprised he's not trying to get more. Granted, Ghana is a really poor country, and I wouldn't be surprised if a fair number of his members are living on that much money per week. So if we were to adjust for that, it's a ripoff, a horrible, disgusting, ugly ripoff from a horrible, disgusting person. This is just fucking ridiculous. The next story I want to talk about related to this is out of South Korea, where the Shincheonji Church of Jesus, Temple of the Tabernacle of the Testimony, that is a singular name of an organization. It is a rather obscure and poorly known, intentionally obscure Christian group in South Korea that, like a lot of homegrown Christian groups in East Asia, is pretty over-the-top crazy. The leader of this group and founder believes that he is the Messiah, as in he is the chosen one who will save the world, the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is a group that meets frequently, like a lot of groups that many would probably identify as a cult do. They keep their members as tightly knit as possible. And somebody in that group brought in coronavirus from China or picked it up there in South Korea. I don't know which necessarily that would be. But it has spread like wildfire. Of note, people have identified this. The issue with this group is how much time they spend together and how much physical contact they have as part of their services. Lots of hugging and putting their arms around each other and the like. That's not particularly uncommon. Lots of pretty typical churches will meet several times during the weekend and midweek and lay hands on each other and hug and join hands in prayer and put their arms around each other as they pray. And any group like that could quickly become, 60% of a country's. At the time of this article from the Korea Herald, South Korea's 763 cases. 60% of 763. We're only talking about 456 people out of a church with across their several locations that has almost 250,000 members. That's not really a high percentage. That's just a group that got hit. And this has prompted a online petition that has gotten over 500,000 signatures. This petition was filed on the official website of the South Korean president, and because it got more than 200,000 signatures in a month, it requires an official response from the government, and it is demanding that he forcibly disband this group. Yeah, it's a weird religious group with a cult of personality around a self-identified messiah. It's bullshit and it's dangerous, and it probably needs to go. Using a outbreak of a legitimately scary disease to try to justify disbanding a rather large cult sounds like you found a problem for a solution you already had waiting. And that sucks. I do know from, this article does point out that there have been investigations into this group, in particular with this outbreak, checking on whether or not they are following the health codes in reporting illnesses that are being identified within the church. And I think it would be worthwhile to request that be investigated a little bit more deeply, or maybe to request that the government step up its reporting requirements and requirements to cooperate and bring in public health authorities into insular groups. I think the U.S. should probably do something similar, especially when you consider that the measles outbreak we had last year was largely found in at least two of the big outbreaks. The New Jersey, New York one was in the Orthodox Jewish community, and the Southwestern Washington one was in a particular church there. When you have people coming together, stuff like that will happen. And then finally, we have Iran, where it's breaking out and probably spreading to surrounding countries from Iran. There have been at least 15 people killed by the virus. Iran is reporting 95 cases. Everybody knows that it's higher than that. They don't have the infrastructure to take care of this and to adequately test for it and keep up on those details. So it's bad. The deputy health minister and a member of parliament have both tested positive for the coronavirus, and people are calling them to shut down the shrines in the cities of Qom and Mashhad. Qom is the main place where this viral outbreak is happening in the country. It is one of the top places for pilgrims of the Shia branch of Islam. And we're talking, that city alone gets millions of pilgrims. And it has a very important seminary for religious students from around Shia Islam. And they won't shut them down because it's important for their religion, which means people are going to be traveling into the middle of a viral outbreak that they can take home at the conclusion of their pilgrimages. And since it has a 14-day incubation period, oh yeah, that's just absolutely perfect. Oh man, they're shutting down major sporting events for, some of the trial runs for getting into the World Cup and some of the trials for the Olympics. And yeah, you don't want a bunch of people traveling into a place where they've got a high chance of catching this virus. There are times when you need to set religion aside or else people are going to die. Man. But that's going to wrap up the rant, and then we'll be back with the interview. We are now joined by Tracey Benefield. She is she's a benefit list.
To our podcast.
The Assistant State Director for Texas for American Atheists, co-founder and executive director of the Atheist Community of Lubbock. She's done an atheist invocation for Lubbock City Hall, writes articles for American Atheist Magazine, and speaking at the American Atheist Convention, and works for Girl Scouts.
Yes.
Am I missing anything?
Type A personality.
Yeah. That's most of it. I mean, there's all kinds of other stuff, but yeah, that's the gist.
And a mother of two boys with a degree in early childhood education. That's yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Bit of a Renaissance woman.
That's awesome, though. Well, I say though as if that's not awesome, but it is. That's awesome.
Oh, man. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with, the American Atheist Convention. That's coming up here pretty soon, right?
Yeah. Coming up here in March.
Oh, crap. Soon.
Or in April, I'm sorry.
April. No, Easter's on April. It's always on Easter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always on Easter. It's in April. Last year it was in March, but this year it's April.
All right. And you're going to be doing a workshop there.
Yes, I'm going to be doing a workshop on building communities, actually, and why that's important for atheists to do.
All right. Well, then let's go ahead and jump in onto that. You helped found the Atheist Community of Lubbock. So let's start off with tell us a bit about Lubbock, Texas.
What is a Lubbock?
What is a Lubbock? Well, a Lubbock is kind of unique. So we have Texas Tech University here, but we're also kind of a small town. So we have this small town feel, but we have a lot of resources here because the university is here.
Nice.
I like to say that we're a concentrated city. We may not have multiples of things, but we have one of everything.
Like, what's the population?
It's about 250,000, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
With a metro area or not?
We are the metro area.
Okay.
We are the biggest city anywhere anywhere around. You have to drive about 5 hours to get anywhere that's a bigger city than us.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like out where we are in Idaho, you look around at the cities around here, and like we've got Moscow, Idaho, up in the Panhandle with a population of like 10,000, but
Maybe.
it's got a university.
But it's and it's a good university. It's just smack dab in the middle of this little town.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you have cities like, Salt Lake's not too far away. It's a metro area of like 1.5 million people, with the actual city itself is not even 200,000.
Yeah.
And so you just get all this weird stuff. Okay, so you've got a concentrated city.
Yes.
That's gotta really help with trying to organize things.
It really does. It makes the resources easier to access because there's a smaller group of people. So the same group of people gets to end up doing some of the like lots of different nonprofit stuff. And so if you're in one nonprofit thing, you kind of get introduced to people who have influence in a bunch of other areas.
The nonprofit groupies.
Right. Nonprofit groupies, essentially. And so there's just, a small group of a couple hundred people maybe that do most of the nonprofit work in town. And if you get to know enough of them, then your resources are vastly expanded. And so it's a lot easier to break into the community whenever it's concentrated like that.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And then when did you start the Atheist Community of Lubbock? So
we started out as kind of a social group, and our original name was Heathens, Atheists, Humanists, and Heathens, Atheists, Humanist Association, or HaHa.
I love it.
And we just met as a social group for, a number of years, probably 8 to 10 years, and then there was a group of us who just decided we wanted to be a little bit more active and we wanted to actually affect change in the community. And so we started coming together and getting formalized and got our nonprofit status and, got a group of people to start working together as a charity. And we've had a lot of success.
All right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, so which do you find to be more valuable, just the social group or the more activist organization?
They're equally valuable. So the thing is that you can't effectively do the activist part of it without the social part. You can't. This is kind of what my workshop is about on building community is that you cannot effectively affect change with just one person participating in all of the activist activities. You have to take time
we know
to
that.
cultivate relationships and to build those relationships and to make people trust you, to make people feel a part of a community in order to motivate them enough to want to fight for one another and do the activist stuff.
Is the social group still a distinct organization or is it all part of the Atheist Community of Lubbock?
Well, it's more of an online community at this point. So we separated them because Atheist Community of Lubbock is our outward facing portion. And so it's what the rest of the community sees. It's what Lubbock sees. And so we want to project an image that is non-threatening, but we also need a safe space for a lot of our members to be able to talk about things that upset them when it comes to religion and things like that. So that's kind of where HaHa comes in, and they allow a safe space, especially online, for people to kind of poke fun of and, talk about religion in a way that might not be appropriate.
Downright offensive.
Right. Yeah. But we do still, Atheist Community of Lubbock does have a social arm, and we do a lot of social activities, and we do make that an important part of our organization that we do not forget about. It's one of the most important things for us to focus on.
All right. That separation, it definitely sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
And do you have a good active group?
Yeah, we have. So our online community is about 215 members. And we have a good group of maybe about 50 people that will come out to volunteer for things and will come out to social events and discussion nights and things like that.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's hard to keep people, especially over a long period of time with life changes and people aging in or aging out of the group.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And you have to, part of building a community is meeting people's needs. So one of the things that we focus on a lot is not just, all of the activist stuff or having discussion nights, but actively trying to build a community where people feel like they can rely on us whenever things come up in their life that they need help with. We try to actually be a community that is there for our members. So we do things like we have a relief fund for our members who fall on hard times, and we have money available for them, and they can make requests for us to help them out during their difficult financial troubles. And so we try to implement programs like that where we're actually building community, and that way people never really do age out. It's just something that they can constantly come back to.
Yeah, in our area we have the Atheist group, which is typically people in their 20s and 30s who are single. Families don't integrate well. And then there's the Humanists, who are the older people who actually follow stuff like legislation and write into the editor and actually do more of the activism stuff. Yeah. While, if you're young and you just want to party with a bunch of people who hate religion, you go to the other group.
Yeah.
we aged out of the first one, but we haven't aged into the second one yet.
Oh, I see. You're in that middle ground there.
We're in the middle young family area, which is a huge vacuum here in the Treasure Valley. And
it's hard.
No parent has the energy to do that.
Right. And it's hard to include kids. Luckily, I have 2 kids, and they are very active when it comes to being political or sharing their ideas religiously. And so one of my oldest, he likes to have kids discussion nights. And so, he'll have a group of the kids come over and watch a movie and then discuss, what it means, theologically. And he's about 8. And so he,
I was thinking a 13-year-old, 14.
No.
That is amazing.
Wow.
He's very interested in big ideas right now. And so they get into some pretty neat discussions. And, kids have a kind of an infallible logic that's just, it's really neat to see them work through some of these big ideas on their own.
Well, there's a podcast idea for you.
Yeah.
Gosh.
8-year-old theism. Right.
So then sounds like you do have how successfully bridged all those demographics.
Yeah, so we actually, American Atheist provides a cool little structure. It's called ACEs, and it stands for activism, community, education, and social. And the idea is that you take all 4 of these components and you have someone man each little division, but they're all under the umbrella of your one group. And so that's kind of how we started out with our organizing. All of our work was having volunteers focus on those areas. And so we have a board of directors, and each director takes over one of those. We've modified it a little bit to instead be the care system, which we define as community, which is our internal community, advocacy instead of activism, because we want to advocate for our members, education, and then outreach. So reach is the R. And that's just going out and doing volunteerism and things like that in the community. So we focus on each of those, and it really brings everything together, and we kind of unify that all under Atheist Community of Lubbock.
Oh, that's fantastic. That I would highly suggest everybody out there have some kind of plan like that set out right off the bat if they're going to try and do any kind of group in their area. Because I was a part of a group, I was VP of the group here, and it really was hard and it fell apart because we didn't have individual people doing those things. We had 2 of us that were basically trying to do everything, and it was ridiculous. We ended up doing a holiday parade with just 2, 3 of us.
Yeah.
So it's like by the time you have 1,700 Facebook members, but only one person's willing to show up to the parade to help It's
Right.
like, okay, this isn't working.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of consistency, because when we first started out, we would have social meetings, we'd have discussion nights where we wouldn't get but maybe one person to show up. But it took just being consistent and having those events every month and doing them consistently for people to finally start feeling comfortable to come out of their shell. We realized that there's about a 6-month gap between when a person joins our Facebook group and when they feel brave enough to come to their first meeting. And so we try to just be consistent and have things happen on a regular basis, even if no one comes.
That's awesome. Okay. Great advice.
And with that 4-pronged approach, your deviation from the American Atheist Standard actually sounds smart, because doing advocacy rather than activism in a smaller town that is not the state capital,
Right,
is probably a lot less likely to get you death threats.
yes. Well, we haven't had a whole lot of that, but yeah, well, and the focus too, we wanted to put more emphasis for our small little community on making sure our members felt supported. And activism doesn't really communicate that. When you call it activism, it doesn't communicate, hey, I'm going to fight for you. But advocacy does. That word specifically tells people, I'm not here for myself. I'm here for you, and I'm here to advocate for you and to make your life better.
Yeah, activism's taken on kind of a bad taste for some people recently. You got, I have one friend who honestly believes that you can't get change unless you light a car on fire. She's like, nothing else will get to people. And I'm like, that is so damaging to the image that you're doing more damage than good. But
I think so.
And that's where there's a huge difference between advocacy, which is like a person going to a meeting and stating things, and activism, which involves signs and gatherings in roads and sometimes lighting a car on fire.
No, lighting a car on fire is not activism. That's revolution.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a whole lot of mini revolutions going on all over the place. So.
And, atheists already have this issue with the stereotype of the angry atheist, and we don't need to play into that anymore. It's
militant.
It's why
Attorney General Barr called us a militant group just recently.
Yes. It's why statistically we're one of the least trusted groups in America, is because we have that stereotype of angry atheists. We don't need to do things that play into that any more than we have to. And activism is certainly useful. There are times when it is absolutely necessary and useful to engage in activism, but on a local grassroots level, that's not something that is feasible for everybody. And you're never going to get to the point where you can effectively participate in activism if you don't first spend the time building community and advocating for the people around you.
I'd say activism is a good short-term way of dealing with a problem, while advocacy is a good long-term way. If something bad happens in your community, getting people out to say, hey, that was wrong right away is a good way to address that. But in order to enact actual change that is going to last, you need people to be sitting down and working on a plan and long-term trying to get stuff passed, enacted, or just views changing.
Right. And activism is reactive, whereas advocacy is proactive.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's ongoing. It's something that you're doing all of the time. And, every time that I'm out at a city, event, at a community engagement event, I'm advocating for the people who I represent in the Atheist Community of Lubbock, even if I'm just visible. If I'm visible as a voter and as an atheist, that's advocacy, because I'm advocating that people should listen to atheist voices and consider atheist viewpoints when trying to make decisions for the city or for our local community. So even just being visible as an open and out atheist can be considered advocacy. And I think that kind of soft advocacy is very important for changing people's viewpoints on what an atheist can be.
Well, I love the comic that shows what a militant atheist is, and it's a bunch of guys sitting around a table drinking coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Our weapon of choice is coffee.
Yes, coffee and conversation.
Yeah. Sometimes donuts if you're lucky.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So if if somebody's listening, doesn't have a local community and wants to create one, how would you suggest that they start?
I think Facebook is an incredible tool to get started. It's how we got started. Well, actually, we got started on Meetup, but
so did we.
Yeah, but Facebook is an incredible tool to get started. And like I said before, having just things that are consistent. Like one of the easiest things that we do is Taco Tuesday. We have this little Mexican restaurant here in town, and the first Tuesday of every month, we all just get together and eat tacos. We don't necessarily have to talk about anything religious, but we find that is the most comfortable place for new members to come and introduce themselves. It's in a public setting. They can bail if they want to. If they get there and they feel like it's too, it's too scary, they can take off and leave, and it's not intimidating. So having regular activities like that where you don't care if no one shows up. There's been times where it's just been me and my kids there, but making that consistent and letting people have that opportunity to come and introduce themselves is important. But also doing things that get you attention it really helps build up membership. So whenever we first started, we had brought over some people from the HaHa group, but we really knew that there were more atheists in Lubbock than were in our little group. And so we needed some kind of publicity. And that's where that invocation came in. We just requested to do the invocation. The news picked up the story. And within a year, we almost doubled our membership.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so especially in a local community, doing something like that, or even doing like a volunteer activity where everybody that's there is wearing shirts that say atheist or say the name of your community. If you can get the news out there, it will spread the word and be ready to tell people where they can get in contact with you and how they can join your group. So doing those kinds of activities where you get a little bit of free publicity is always going to really help boost your group. It can do amazing things. So I would say don't be afraid to put yourself out there. A lot of small groups are really afraid of, especially in the rural towns, they're afraid of the backlash they're going to get from the very religious community that they live in. But, if you want to take it from somebody who lives in the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, it's possible to put yourself out there and to be out as an atheist and be out as an atheist group without people being really hateful. We haven't had too much of that here. And so as long as you don't come out and are aggressive about it, if you just say, hey, I'm doing this nice thing and I'm here and I'm part of this community too, that kind of attitude will get you a lot of new members who are willing to jump on board and help.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Have you run into an issue where the news doesn't care anymore?
No, I haven't, because we're such a religious community. Anytime atheists do anything, it makes the news.
Okay.
Because it's shocking. It causes a lot of debate here. We did a no strings attached homeless outreach event. And that made the news too, because, we were stepping on the church's turf. It's the churches here that do a lot of the community work. And so to see atheists doing that was kind of shocking. And so seeing atheists out, not afraid to be out and in the public is shocking still. And we don't do things, here every couple of months. We limit it to maybe once or twice a year so that things still remain fresh and people aren't getting tired of hearing from us and that kind of thing. But every time we do something like that, our membership skyrockets.
All right. Yeah, that'd be one mistake I made, was trying to add an additional event every year until people just stopped coming.
Right.
But like we did had billboards I think that was 2012 with the Coalition of Reason, and one news channel covered that. We did the 4th of July parade right after that, and we got a lot of cheers and a lot of boos. And every year we got fewer and fewer boos and without that kind of response, fewer people are interested in coming, because when you get booed, you want to, there's a lot of people that just want to get out there and face that. And as people just become kind of apathetic like the larger community starts to become apathetic to the presence of atheists, then
the thrill of it died.
Yeah.
We didn't have crazy ladies yelling at us from the parking garage about Jesus riding dinosaurs anymore. So that's the peak. What are you going to get after that?
So, yeah, actually, that's an interesting point that you bring up, because we have actually not had much of that at all. We haven't had to really deal with the militantness of it from the other side, of them being so much against us.
No.
We haven't really had that at all. We had a few people throw candy back at us at the 4th of July parade last year.
And saying, God bless you.
Yes. Yeah. Or Jesus loves you, you know, from the crowd.
That's okay. We actually had people turning their kids away, which was like, it's like, we're going to get you. We're going to get you next year.
I know. I really enjoyed, my favorite thing to do was, before the parents realized what group we were in, I was going around and high-fiving all their kids, and it really seemed to upset them. But
that's awesome.
But we really haven't had much of that where people have been really militant, but we have had a pretty good turnout from membership. And I think that the reason here, at least, is because we're not just doing things to make ourselves visible. We're also serving. We're serving our members, and we're doing things for them. So like I said, our relief fund, for instance, or going out and helping the community and doing volunteerism. I think that that's a huge part of it. There's not really any kind of volunteer opportunities here in Lubbock that are secular. You know, if people want to volunteer, they have to be associated with the church. Giving people the opportunity to serve their community and to feel like they're helping other people, while being able to volunteer for a group that truly represents them, I think is extremely valuable. So it's not just doing the things that get you attention, but it's also doing things that fulfill an emotional need for the members of your community.
Well, and you have the benefit of a singular organization.
Right.
Whereas what we were running into was a coalition of reason with 5 members, and the member groups were all supposed to be providing the services for their members and the volunteer opportunities and the like, and then the coalition was doing the more public outreach stuff.
Instead, they ended up basically wanting us to do everything for them.
Yeah.
And then not providing any members who were willing to help. It's like, okay, did you guys even mention our little get together to your group? No? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is really hard whenever you've got 2 different, communities that are doing 2 different types of things. It is definitely easier if you can pull everybody in under one umbrella and just separate out the duties between different volunteers, because then you're still operating within one system, and it makes things a little bit more coherent and easier to work with.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely makes sense, especially when you've got a single head of the organization and one board that you can pull together.
Right. Yeah, that's been a structure that's worked for us pretty well. So all of our board members, they each take on a different one of those, divisions that I mentioned earlier. And then as the executive director, I handle a lot of the overarching stuff, the stuff that encompasses the entire umbrella. I do a lot of these podcasts, for instance. I would do a lot of media communications. I, focus on managing volunteers and doing fundraisers and that kind of thing. So if you can have one person who kind of sees the whole big picture, you don't need everybody to be able to see the big picture. You just need that one person who's capable of doing that. And then each of the other volunteers can focus on their one area and strengthening that area as best they can.
And not step on each other's toes.
Right. And they can collaborate. There are times whenever a social event might also, work with our community outreach director, and they'll coordinate and do something together. But for the most part, most of the duties are very clearly outlined. So I think one of the pieces that people don't pay enough attention to is the actual organizational structure of the group, and making sure that everybody's duties are clearly outlined and everybody knows exactly what their expectations are. That way, nobody is stepping on anyone's toes, and you all have have your specific things that you're working on and your specific goals. And you're able to accomplish more together that way than if you were to all try to work on one problem together.
Yeah. Ah, very nice. So how did the changing gears a bit, when you did the Atheist Invocation at City Hall,
I did. Yes.
How did that go over?
That was a really interesting experience because we anticipated a lot of pushback, and we anticipated that there was going to be a lot of people who were going to protest and things like that, because this is a very religious area. And that's not what we got at all.
In Texas? No.
Yeah, actually, it was really interesting. So we didn't call the press or anything, but they found out about it. And I did a few interviews beforehand and then after. And it was really interesting to see that I'd say about 85% of all of the comments underneath the news stories were positive. And they were really encouraging on how inclusive we should be and that kind of thing. And it was really nice to see. There was a few people who were just confused, who didn't know how an atheist could possibly give an invocation. They were confused on what invocation was. They thought it meant prayer, that it was synonymous with that word. And it, of course it isn't.
Which is, which is part of the problem of having them in the first place.
Right. But it was interesting because we found that most of the people who had any kind of objection to it were just confused, and we're fine with confusion. We're fine with people asking questions. That's something we're very comfortable with. If if people are just, I just don't understand, if that's the attitude they have, oh, great, we can educate you. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And we didn't really receive any kind of hate. Which was interesting. We actually had one of the council members reach out to us, and we were really nervous about meeting with them because we thought that they were, going to basically give us a bunch of list of rules on what we could and couldn't say and what they would do. And there was rumors of the council members walking out whenever I started to speak. But the council member was really nice, and he said, no, I'm just worried about protesters. And we assured him, we're like, no, none of our people are going to protest. And they're like, no, we're concerned about religious protesters protesting you. and then
you just shrug and say, I
don't know what to tell you. I hope it doesn't happen, but I can't stop it from happening. But they were all really nice. And we didn't have a whole lot of pushback on it. And afterwards, I actually had quite a few local pastors reach out to me and congratulate me and thank me for doing that. Because I don't think we'd even had a non-Christian of any kind do an invocation for at least the last 3 years. I went back and looked at all of them, and they'd all been Christian, just different denominations. So there hadn't even been a Muslim or a Jewish person or Buddhist or anybody else.
Somebody has to step up and make the first.
Yeah.
To allow other people to be comfortable and saying, hey, we want to do it too.
Yeah,
exactly.
Especially since the Greece ruling allowing openly sectarian invocations.
Yes, absolutely. And so it was really nice to see that kind of openness. And we didn't have to fight either to get on the schedule. It was really just as simple as calling the secretary and saying we wanted to get on there. And she said, okay, well, we'll pick it. Here's a few dates. Which one do you want? It was very easy. Whereas a lot of other, directors who have had to do this in their states or in other small towns have had a lot of pushback and a lot of had to fight for that opportunity.
Oh, gee, we lost the information and your appointment wasn't made. And
exactly. And we didn't have to deal with any of that, which was really nice. And so, I like to say Lubbock's a little different. The town motto here is something like the friendliest town in America. And so I kind of use that to my advantage.
That's because you have no neighbors.
We have to be friendly, right? We have no neighbors to escape to. There's nothing else around us but cotton.
Wow. Yeah, but that is definitely encouraging to hear, because you always hear the stories about the Bible Belt, and especially it seems like Texas gets its own set just by itself, but it's nice to hear that they're all nice people.
Yeah, there are nice people here. I think really what happens a lot of the time is that, that militant atheist thing is that stereotype's there for a reason. Sometimes even we buy into it ourselves and we act like that. And we sometimes put people on the defensive I found that if I act like I'm just supposed to be there and I have no idea why anyone would think otherwise, and I'm just ignorant to that most people will just be friendly. And if you just give them a chance and let them treat you how they're going to treat you, and show them, the level of respect that you would want from them, and you don't come into it thinking that they are going to discriminate against you. If you come into it thinking, giving them that benefit of the doubt, a lot of the times people will rise to that expectation.
Yeah. Oh, it is kind of funny. I just pulled up Lubbock on Wikipedia, and on the sidebar, right when you get past all the demographics, there's a picture, and the little citation for it is, Lubbock has a large number of churches, including the downtown First Baptist congregation.
Ooh, how much did they have to pay to get their name on there?
I have no idea, but I know that on Wikipedia, at least, it lists Lubbock as like having the most churches per capita in the entire United States. I don't think that that's accurate, but
everybody wants that.
That's what they pride themselves in. That's the statistic that we tell ourselves to make. That's what Lubbockites like to take pride in, is that we have a lot of churches here. But what's really funny is the last religious census that was done in 2010 showed that 42.4% of Lubbockites are non-religious.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a huge percentage.
Yeah.
So that's not atheists, but it's not religious. It's
perceived tradition will rule over the future generations, if not, if left to their own device.
Right.
Well, it's like we get that in Idaho, where people think, it's just a bunch of Mormons. Mormons make up maybe 20% of the population.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even the largest religious group, let alone.
But they do make up a lot of the powerful positions.
Right.
So it keeps that perception going.
But yeah, and that's even despite the fact that the most powerful people tend to be Pentecostal or Catholic.
Right.
But the Mormons get the publicity.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the most visible is generally the ones, because you're going to have your organizations that are powerful, but they're kind of hidden and they prefer it that way. But then you're going to have your organizations that are maybe not as powerful, but they're visible. And so that's kind of what we're trying to emulate as well, is just being visible. And so I volunteer for a lot of different things here in Lubbock. And I think just making my face visible to everybody. I don't want anybody to ever go to some kind of nonprofit liberal meeting without seeing my face there. I'm going to be at the NAACP meetings, and I'm going to be at the Earth Day things, and I'm going to be at all of the different major nonprofit things that go on in Lubbock and have an atheist representative there. I'm going to be at the Pride Parade. I'm going to be everywhere where people are fighting for equal rights, regardless of whether it's for atheism or for another minority group, because making ourselves visible, it gives people this idea that they need to take us into account when representing the rest of the city.
Yeah.
Even if it's just one person, even if it's just me out there representing that, at least I'm a face and I'm a representative for my community.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears again.
Okay.
In your day job, you work as a girl experience specialist for Girl Scouts.
I do, yes.
What the hell is that?
So basically, I plan program and events for girls. I work with local businesses and organizations, and I try to get them to help me put on different programs for the girls to earn badges for, or just experiences that they wouldn't otherwise get through school or through their own troop. So an example is, like, I am putting on a program with Small Business Development Center in several areas where girls will come in and they learn how to develop their own business plan. And so it gives them some practical skills, and they'll earn a badge. And so that's generally what I do. And I also, help them with any kind of troop work if the troop leaders are needing any kind of support, with the actual education of some of these badges, because some of them can be quite complicated. I help them learn how to teach those different programs.
Isn't it kind of redundant to be the girls programmer for the Girl Scouts?
Well, there's things that troop leaders can do and they can do within their troop. And then there's things that they may not have the resources to be able to do. There's experiences that those girls might not otherwise get if they didn't have, somebody at a council level, which is more like the business level. If they didn't have someone like that coordinating things for from the city and getting different program partners together. So there's just some things that a troop leader might not be able to do that I, as a council person, could probably help them do a lot easier.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a big difference between what you're doing in your little volunteer role versus your day job.
Yeah.
Right.
You can do a whole lot more in your day job.
That's true.
Yeah.
And have you run into any issues with being like the atheist face of Lubbock and your day job?
There, at first, it was a little bit of an adjustment. Most of the people that I work with are religious. But the good thing about Girl Scouts is they're a secular organization. Mm-hmm. And so they were pretty welcoming and accepting of my activism. And I do, because I am in the nonprofit world here in Lubbock, and like I said, it's concentrated, so everybody once you're in it. I do try to keep it as separate as possible, because when I'm advocating for the Girl Scouts, it's going to look a little different than advocating for the atheist group. So I try to always keep those two things separate as much as possible. And it's been a little bit of a tango sometimes on how to do that. But for the most part, it's worked out pretty smoothly.
Yeah, because that would be difficult if you're using all of the same social connections to make it clear which hat you're wearing at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. It does get a little confusing sometimes, because sometimes we do run into using the same resources or partnering with the same people. But I try to, keep 2 separate email accounts, 2 phone numbers, keep everything separated so that if I'm calling from this number, I'm specifically going to talk about this thing. And then I'll hang up and call you back if I'm going to if I need a question answered for the other organization. I try to create some clear lines for myself so
that's
they don't
good.
get blurred. Yeah.
Oh man, that is hilarious. The hang up and call back as somebody the same person doing something else.
Maybe even from a different phone number from the same phone.
Yeah.
I mean, if you use Google Voice or something like that, that's pretty good. So I had a question about, since you work with children a lot, and we happen to have one, I was wondering, what is your stance on privacy for children especially regarding internet presence?
So this is one of those times I'm going to comment as both a Girl Scout and an atheist. But I think privacy and children's rights are extremely important, and I think it's important to make sure that children can be armed with information on how to protect themselves, because you can't always protect kids when they're online. They have to be able to make good decisions for themselves. And so I think that children's information and their privacy is extremely important, and doing things to protect their information until they reach an age where they're better able to make those decisions on their own is really important. And I think that companies should pay more attention to, especially if they are advertising to children and if they're dealing with children's information. We need to advocate for legislation that protects their information until they reach an age where they are able to take control of their own information and decide what they want to do with it.
More than the last legislation, which was 1998? I think.
Right.
The COPA.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, there's a lot that's happened since then. Can we update those rules?
Yeah, there's been a lot more that's happened since then.
I was in particularly because we only have a 2-year-old, so we can't tell her how to protect herself. She doesn't need that yet. But what kind of damage am I doing as a parent posting where we're on vacation, posting photos of her as she grows up, having her involved in activist stuff that Dustin and I are a part of. I mean, I know they say everything that goes on the internet is kept forever, but in the modern society, how do you balance that out?
I don't think that involving your kids in the activism that you do is necessarily a bad thing. And of course, it all just depends on your personal preference and how much you want to involve your kids. But I involve my kids in everything, and I let them see everything. And I do let them make their own decisions, though. They are allowed to say, I don't want to participate in that. They are allowed to say, I don't want to do this. And I know I don't want you to take my picture. But, when you have a 2-year-old, that's a little bit more difficult. But I think that being developmentally appropriate with it is important. And of course, a 2-year-old can't make those decisions. But as soon as they are able to advocate for themselves in whatever way they are able, or
maybe just a little bit before, by like introducing them, just kind of like do you want to hug your grandma and grandpa before you say, hey, you need to go hug your grandma and grandpa? It's like,
exactly.
Are you uncomfortable doing that? Let us know.
Whatever level of advocacy that they can.
Is that a lovable uncle or is that a creepy uncle? You let us know.
Exactly. Whatever they're able to do, they should do.
Okay.
So if they're capable of voicing whether or not they have an opinion on something, then they should be able to do that. Of course, a 2-year-old's not going to be able to voice their opinion on the, philosophical, reasons for why they believe in God or don't believe in God, but they can tell you whether or not they want to hug.
Yeah.
And so being able to, that level of advocacy, I think, will change as they get older and they're able to tell you what they want and what they don't want. And so I think being adaptable to that and respecting a child's autonomy and letting them make their own decision is incredibly important. Too often, I think parents get caught up in this idea where they try to control their kids and they try to control their children's choices because it makes their life easier. But really recognizing that children are actually just people with less information, then that's all they really are. And so we have to respect their ability to make choices for themselves as much as is safe for them to do so. There are certain things they probably can't make choices for themselves on, but if it's safe for them to make their own choice and it doesn't really harm anyone, then they should be able to make that choice, even if it makes our lives as parents just slightly more difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was feeling bad for posting so many pictures of my kid on Facebook for family and friends to see. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way because it's gotten to the point where Google Photos is able to tell me if she's in a photo every single time. And whether it's profile or straight on. Facebook isn't as good, but there is that as she gets older, they're going to be able to tie that face together very easily.
Right.
Even by the time a kid is 2 years old, you can almost see what they're going to look like as an adult. By the time they're 8, definitely. Yeah.
And, my kids can tell me, too, if they want me to, I can ask them, do you want me to put this on Facebook so everybody can see it? And, my 8-year-old's able to tell me, like, no, I don't like the way my hair looks in this. Please don't post that. So just giving them the opportunity to voice that opinion. If they're able to tell you what their opinion is, then we should be able to respect it.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
I know that was not really related, but it's been something that's been on my mind recently. So that could be Patreon content if you want. But I was really curious.
I enjoy talking about child rights. I love advocating for kids. I think that's something we don't do enough of, especially like in the schools, advocating for, kids' autonomy to be able to express their opinions about things in school is incredibly important, especially as an atheist and as an atheist parent that values free expression and values free thinking. Advocating for a child's autonomy and being able to express themselves is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Even more so if you're a girl.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's something that can be really difficult to not just advocate for, but to honestly respect. I know I struggle with it sometimes, like when I'm leaving for work in the morning and want to give Kylie a hug and a kiss and she wants nothing to do with it. And when I respect that, it's a lot more likely that she will chase me as I'm leaving, about to walk out the door, wanting to say goodbye.
Yep. It has to be on her terms. I learned that dog training. Yeah. You have to trick them into thinking it's on their terms.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's gonna. My luck with that is gonna run out here at about 3, but it's been working so far.
And there's all kinds of ways around it too, where you can, like you said, trick kids and into making your life a little easier. My kid went through a phase where he was pretty stubborn about giving me hugs and kisses. So instead, I'd give his little teddy bear a hug and a kiss and say, okay, then his teddy bear, your teddy bear's holding my hug and kiss for you whenever you're ready. But I've got to go.
Oh, yep.
So
it's like, okay, this is the 3rd time I've hugged and kissed a toy of yours. It's time to go.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to hold on to this for me, this kiss for me, but I've got to leave. So kiss the bear whenever you're ready.
So back on the Girl Scouts thing, you say you have a lot of churches there. Where do you hold meetings? Is it always going to be at a person's private home, or do you have like a community center that you can use?
So we actually have a few, maybe, I don't know, a few hundred troops. So they all pick their own meeting places. Some of them will have it at a church. Some of them have it at school, some at the community center, and then some in their own homes. It really just is a personal preference of whoever the troop leader is.
Okay. Yeah, that was a big part of me growing up. My parents never wanted me in Girl Scouts, and I didn't know this till much later. They said they didn't want to get sucked into the volunteering. But later I found out that all of the Girl Scout troops were run through the LDS churches. And it was basically, if you were in a certain ward, you went to a certain troop, and they knew that I would be excluded immediately.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, thanks, okay. Even though it broke my heart to not be able to go to these things with my friends. My friends were not part of the same religion as I was. So it would have been really super awkward.
Exactly. And that's part of the reason, like, my boys aren't in Boy Scouts, because they are a religious organization, unlike the Girl Scouts. And so they do have a religious requirement. And I just won't subject my kids to that. I won't make them sign anything that says that they believe in a God if they don't. And so unfortunately, that's one of those opportunities that they have to miss out on. And they're not girls, so they can't join Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the things I do like about Girl Scouts is that it's a little bit more inclusive, especially when it comes to religion and to other cultures. And we accept all types of girls, and we're, even transgender girls, we accept them too. So we're a little bit more open and accepting, and it's a lot more of a positive.
I really wish the Boy Scouts would get on the same page, but what are you going to do?
Well, and they keep loosening their rules, and they finally loosened the rules enough to alienate the Mormons.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're doing their own.
They're still doing that. Yeah, they're doing their own thing now, which is how it should have been in the first place.
Right. And and I don't want to speak too much on the Boy Scouts since I don't represent them in any way, but
and it's different what region of the United States you're in too. I mean,
it definitely is. It definitely is. And it's very dependent on what region, what city you're in, what state you're in. So, but it's always nice whenever you can see an organization become a little bit more open than they had been in the past.
All right. And can you tell us a bit more about your No Strings Attached homeless outreach program?
Oh, yeah.
I like that. It's a huge problem here.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite things that we've done. So there's actually a little backstory about how we named it. I went to go volunteer for a local church organization here that they're an organization where they feed people, they provide a meal, and then they have rooms that have all kinds of supplies in them, and people can go and take what they need. And they normally have organizations come in, like student organizations or, other types of groups come in and help them serve the meals and cook the meals. Well, this particular day, they had like 4 of these groups just completely drop out, and they were in crisis mode. They put out the call to the nonprofit community, hey, we need help. And one of our members got wind of it, and they asked if the atheist community would be willing to go down there. And so I said, yes, absolutely. They said, you wear the t-shirt of the group that you're in, come down and help. So I put on my Atheist Community of Lubbock shirt. It's just got a little logo on the chest that just says Atheist Community of Lubbock. It's got a little heart on it. It's real cute. And I went down and helped sort things out and sort out donations. And one lady stopped me and she said, so what group are you from? I said, I'm from the Atheist Community of Lubbock. She goes, oh, so you don't believe in God? I said, no.
God.
She goes, why are you here? I said, well, I heard y'all needed help. I'm here to help. She goes, so you're just a good person? Yeah, believe it or not, I am. So anyway,
what's in it for you?
Yeah.
And you're like, are you only here because you're trying to get good credit under your God? I mean, come on.
I know.
You're here for...
It was mind-blowing, apparently, that there were good people who didn't believe in God.
And that little interaction may have changed her viewpoint very radically.
It may have, and maybe not on on God, but maybe on what an atheist is.
What an atheist is. Yeah. You're not a heathenistic, communist, anti-American devil worshiper.
Exactly. But, after, volunteering there for about an hour or so, we were getting ready to serve the meal. And before we let people in, one of the pastors got up and said something like, okay, now, don't pass out the food yet, because we don't want the food on the table when they get here, and we don't want them to eat yet. Because if we have the food on the table, they're just going to eat and they won't listen to the sermon. And that rubbed me the wrong way a lot.
Way wrong.
Yeah, that really rubbed me the wrong way, that they were withholding the food that these homeless and low-income families needed to eat. They're withholding that so that they would listen to the sermon. And I don't think that they even saw that as wrong. And it really disturbed me.
It's like, you're willing to let people starve for the sake of proselytizing? Really?
Exactly. And so, but I was still there to help. So I didn't say anything at the time. And then right before they let people in, another one of the pastors came up and he said, hey, we need you to leave. And we're glad that you came here to volunteer, but our main mission here is to bring people to Jesus. And if people see your shirt, then they're going to get confused. So we want you to go.
After you helped.
After I've already helped. And they said I could come back as long as I wasn't wearing that shirt. And I didn't mention that I was an atheist. And so, everybody else was allowed to wear, their group's merchandise because they didn't care, if a group of football players is over there helping, but they care if people see atheists being good. And they think that that's going to confuse people. And that it really upset me to a point where we decided, we need a secular way of giving back to the community. If there are homeless people who are atheists or who are non-religious, and they may feel uncomfortable reaching out to help from these people who are holding their situations hostage and using their vulnerabilities against them to try to proselytize to them, and that this isn't right. And so we decided to have a homeless resource fair is essentially what it is. And we called it No Strings Attached, because we don't care where people are coming from, and we're not going to try to talk to them about what they believe in. And we don't even mention it. We just show up and we help, and for the sake of helping, and it's for no other reason. And so we got all these community partners together who came out and gave information on the resources that they provide. And we provided a meal for them. We had clothing and blankets and tarps and, all kinds of hygiene items, but a bunch of stuff. And the total homeless population here in Lubbock is 291 people. And we served 140 of them. So we served about 40% of the total homeless population in Lubbock that day.
Oh, wow.
Well, for one, when you're in crisis, a lot of people will assume that you will just accept help from anybody because you're desperate. And there's a
Right.
lot of people who, when they're in crisis, all they have left is their principles, and they're not willing to give that up. They're not willing to go panhandle. They're not willing to go beg for money because they have these principles that won't let them. And the same is true with going to a place, listening to some guy spew Jesus at you, having maybe even to do something yourself before you can even get food. And it's just, those people exist and they need help as much as anybody.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if you only, you're just a good person and not just a good religious person, then okay.
Exactly. And, that's a good point that you bring up. And I can actually attest to that. I have actually been homeless before, and I was homeless with my 2 kids.
Oh.
And at that point, I could have gone to churches for food. I could have gone and gotten food vouchers and things. And I felt uncomfortable doing that. And I didn't reach out to those people for help. I didn't ask Catholic Family Charities for help because I didn't want to accept help from those places that didn't represent me, that I didn't feel comfortable going to. And had there been a community like the one there is now, I may have reached out to them to ask for help. So it's providing other, avenues for people to get assistance that they feel comfortable reaching out to. Everybody needs a community. And so that's what we're trying to provide is another alternative for people to reduce the risk of people who are in poverty and who are homeless and who need assistance, but maybe feel too proud to ask people for help that don't actually represent them.
Or showing up to the place and saying, I'm actually an atheist. I don't do that, and then being turned away.
Exactly. I have one specific memory of going to an event where I didn't know that it was a church putting on this event. That's why I went, or else I wouldn't have gone. But to get school supplies for my kids. And after my kids picked up their little backpacks, we were about to walk out, and somebody grabs my kid by the hand and pulls them into a prayer circle and tries to start praying with me and my kids. And, we literally ran out of there with our stuff because I didn't want to be pulled into that. That's not why I was there. And, it sucks to be in that position and to feel like you have to, be talked down to, and you have to be you have to listen to their whole spiel about converting you. And it's an added hassle that people shouldn't have to put up with.
And if especially if you're younger and you don't know how to handle that kind of situation. Yes. When I was invited to a ski trip with a friend. I didn't know it was a religious convention thing that she had dragged me to. So this whole time before before we went skiing, I had to sit there in this huge convention hall with this guy telling me about how you need to avoid the friends that aren't in your religion, how they're bad people, how they're going to drag you to hell. And I just, I ran away. I was bawling. I was like, I don't belong here. And the adults are like, well, you can't leave. You're under our protection. You can't leave. And I'm like, can I just go back to my room? And they're like, nope. So I had to sit there through the whole thing crying. And I was 13, 14, maybe 12. I didn't know how to handle that situation. I was not prepared for that.
It can be traumatic. And,
it was.
It's difficult to deal with as a young person when you get trapped in those kinds of situations.
Or an adult.
I think that, or an adult. It could be difficult. Especially if you don't know what you're walking into. That's one of those tough situations. You think you're walking into some place where you're either gonna engage in some kind of fun social activity like skiing, or you're gonna get the help that you need, and then boom, they hit you with Jesus. And you didn't see that coming.
I love this no strings attached, because it's all encompassing.
Yes. And it doesn't just refer to the religious community either. It's also referring to the hoops that you have to jump through when you go through governmental systems.
Yes.
Having to have an actual physical address, or having to have a phone number, or a license. All these hurdles that people have to jump through just to get help. And so we just offer help for whoever needs it. And we understand that maybe somebody's going to take advantage of us, but the chances of that happening are acceptable.
Yeah.
We accept that risk because we don't want the people who need the help to go without it because they had to jump through certain hoops.
And there are a lot of hoops.
Right.
Having to prove how much money you make, but not taking into account any loans or monthly expenses. They never say take home pay. They always say how much do you make a year? It's like, well, that is a little different than what my take home pay is.
Yeah.
And if you consider my take home pay, I make nothing. But it looks really good on paper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And being able to just offer that without strings attached, without having preconditions attached to it, is a novel idea, especially in this area where we're dominated by conservatives, and you've got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's a novel idea that people could just get help because they need it.
Even though every single one of those farmers is living off of subsidies.
Right. Right.
But don't mess with their subsidies. That's attack on American farmers. You can't do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, offering homeless people food. Oh, how could you possibly do that without expecting something in return?
You must just be a good person. That's not the default. The default is that you are not a good person. Depending on what you consider good, it's selfish, I guess. That
stereotype, but you just have to be so nice and so human that they just look like a jerk if they try to attack you.
Yes, I love that.
That is my strategy: is just be so bubbly and personable and charismatic and happy that they look like an absolute fool if they're trying to attack you. And that's so it's that kill them with kindness attitude, I think, that that they try to employ on us a lot, I think. But if you turn the tables and just start doing kind, decent things, and they're going to have a lot of trouble lobbing any criticism.
I mean, the worst we're going to do is bore them with tedious debate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always wanted a sign that said no religious solicitors. Knock if you want tedious debate.
Actually, I have a sign in my window it's got a really overweight devil, and it just says your friendly neighborhood atheist. And so people know immediately when they come to my door, whether or not they want to engage. But it makes it a little fun.
Nice.
Poke a little fun. Be able to laugh at yourself, too.
We are out of time.
Oh, gosh, that went fast.
Yeah, we're already at an hour and 7 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So what do you have to plug?
Well, if people want to find out more about the Atheist Community of Lubbock, they can always go to our website, atheistsoflbk.com. All of our social media is under Atheists of LBK. And if you go to our website, you can also find out how to donate and support us and help us continue doing all of the great, amazing volunteer stuff that we do, like helping the homeless.
Awesome. All right, Tracey, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the interview. And just as another reminder, patrons, come join us on Saturday night. If you have any questions or comments, any feedback you want to send us, anything you want us to talk about, send it our way. And if you want to support the show, you can find out how at atheistnomads.com/donate or go to patreon.com/atheistnomads. And if you want to contact us, do so using the feedback form on the website, atheistnomads.com/feedback, or email contact@atheistnomads.com, or hit us up anywhere else. And remember, not all those who wander are lost. Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/atheistnomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.